Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Clues, Cues and Reviews, and today we're looking at the recent chapter of World Trigger 133. Now although this actual chapter is called Gualapolo or Jolapolo, whatever that country is called, 12, it should really be called Sacrifice because a lot of different things happen, and in my review I'll explain the whole thing about Sacrifice as well. And a brilliant chapter, had me confused for a bit, but it made sense when I got to see the rest of the story, and basically a brilliant ending and brilliant setup for what potentially will come in the next arc or the next few chapters. But without further ado, let's get into this review. So 99% of this chapter pretty much covers the battle and the conclusion of the battle with the intruders, way below, next to the expedition ship, Tachikawa, Konami, Kazama, and Murakami, I can never pronounce his name, against Gatlin and Rataraka. So an interesting kind of 5 points that I've got here, so I'll go through them. So for the first one is really about internal dialogue and internal plans. So from the Konami Tachikawa side, it's all about preventing the firing of the cannon, and the Konami side, it's very like, is this okay? Should this be something really we're doing? It seems a bit light-hearted in the sense it seems too simple. And then you've got the whole resolution of Tachikawa saying these have all been foreseen, it's fine. And then you get to see a bit of Gatlin's thoughts where he's thinking, look, I know where all these different teleportation devices are. We need to take care of the shield user first, so the focus is on Murakami and using the cannon against him, I'd imagine, so that they can shift the tide in the battle. So an interesting point there to bear in mind, so you can get to see the internal thoughts and the internal plans of each teams. We do leave a little bit left out from Tachikawa because he does mention something about that thing in the previous chapter, so that we find out later on, but I will leave that for later on as well. So that's point number 1. So, point number 2. Having noted all the teleportation device and having reconfirmed his internal thoughts about what to do next, he effectively tells Ratchanikov to do what he can against Murakami. He's the focus and he's the person that he will need to deal with. Unfortunately for him, Kazama's on his ass, and he notes that Kazama's reading his techniques quite well. He's also knowing that his attacks are getting fiercer, and he's a person that can make a shift decision, a shift change in the battle very quickly, and he has to be careful. So what he actually does is fires his technique at Murakami, and Murakami blocks here, but he noticed that it's actually more of a struggle now that he's lost his arm. So he lost his arm in the earlier chapter. I didn't really mention that because there were other points going on, but it is an interesting point, and I'll have a bit of a discussion at the end that covers all of that. So that's point number 2. So point number 3. Point number 3 is Kazama's internal thoughts. So Kazama's internal thoughts, knowing about the balance and the shift of balance if certain things happen, basically wants all the focus of Ratchanikov to be on him rather than Murakami, because it will affect the other battle that's going on in the same space. So what happens is when Murakami's gets attacked, thing is also damaged. Kazama is also damaged in that process. And Ratchanikov basically realizes this and says he's letting off tree and smoke from where his damage is. So he knows where to attack. So his next attack is to attack the direction where he can see the smoke. Unfortunately for him, it's an arm. So remember how I talked about sacrifice? This is the first sacrifice of this chapter, where he sacrifices his arm as part of a plan. So as soon as Ratchanikov realizes that it's just an arm, he also looks down and realizes he's lost both of his legs. So Kazami sacrifices his arm so he could deal damage to both of Ratchanikov's legs. So he's taken them out. And then when he's ordered by Gatlin, Ratchanikov throws one more attack but gets his arm chopped off in the process, effectively taking him out of the battle pretty much, or so we think. Now what's interesting is he mentions that this was something that Kuga has used. It's a Kuga technique, a strategy, so he kind of says thanks Kuga for this. So it's interesting to see that even though Kuga is not really centric in this chapter, I still kind of said, look, he is still an important part of the story, and he has affected a lot of different people in different ways, whether it's emotionally changing the tides and the way they feel about certain things, or just strategically with moves and techniques. So it's an interesting point to bear in mind for point number 3. So point number 4, with basically Rotonikov taken out of the picture, this means that Gatlin has to step it up and kind of speed things up. Now, what actually happens is Tachikawa seems to want to block Gatlin from using the technique. At the same time, he orders Kanami to go help Murakami in the shield area. But what actually happens is Kazama's watching this and he says, but you're going to get blown up in the process yourself, you're going to get shredded in half, type of thing. So we think, yeah, that's going to happen. So this is where I was like, why is he doing this? This makes no sense. But then it's revealed. So basically, as that happens, Tachikawa basically says, you're too late. You can't fire the cannon pretty much. You're going to get shredded in half. And then we see a panel where as Konami was running towards Tachikawa, she actually turned around and did a decisive swipe through both of them. So Tachikawa and Gatlin was shredded in half. So the prediction of the future has come true. But it wasn't necessarily a bad thing because it was using a strategy to basically beat the enemy. Is the enemy more or less done on that? Probably, but with his multiple arms technique, will that maybe make up for it, or has that part been damaged in the process? We'll have to wait and see. This leads on to the 5th point and a bit of speculation at the end. So moving on to point number 5. So point number 5 and then speculation. Point number 5. Basically the ending part. So we get this crazy ending between that battle, which is amazing in itself. And like I said, the whole thing about sacrifice, because that's the second sacrifice really in that chapter. We get to see Reggie and then a guy in a hood, and it turns out to be Huse or Huse, depending on how you want to pronounce his name. And he basically says, oh, you're from Galapolo, whatever it's Galapolo, I think it's called. And he goes, oh, you're from whatever, the first invading army, basically. Afro, whatever they're called. Let me see if I can get their name, because I never know what it is. After the crater, yeah. Something like that. But anyway, so that kind of sets up things to come in the next arc or the next few chapters, because as we know, his mentor is going to be used as a sacrifice in terms of balancing their system, in the neighbor system, I guess. Also, what's important to bear in mind is the fact that they knew that he could potentially come back, and that's why they left him there. So there's the whole revenge element. Now here's final thoughts. The point that they use Trion bodies makes it easy for them to make decisive decisions. Sounds a bit redundant, I know. About what they're going to do. So for example, sacrificing an arm or letting themselves get chopped in half and things like that. So in a way, now hear me out now. So in a way, it can lose that importance and that danger somewhat, because they're not using the real body, so to speak. They're using energy and whatnot, and they are going to be depleted after battle, don't get me wrong. But you can like, for example, if we were watching someone in real life fight and he lost an arm, that would be, yeah, he's lost an arm, there's no coming back from that. But in this, it's like, yeah, they can get away with that for a little bit, and then the next time they fight, they'll have it again. So it has that negative impact. But when you look at it as well, it also produces more daringness, more sacrifice, more I guess more reckless battles and crazy strategies. So I guess in a way it's a positive thing. So this is the kind of balance that they have to get in the story, which is different from everything else, which I think makes this manga, this anime, a lot crazier concept wise than anything else. It's just a shame that it's not getting as much publicity or media as it should be, because I think this is a really good manga, and I really think this story should get pushed up there with the big ones like the fairy tales, like the One Pieces and everything else that's there, because Buko's getting up there, Boku no Hero Academia, and so should this. I know this has got an anime, but it's not as good as it should be, filler and everything else. And me personally, I think they should have just done a 25 episode arc with it. And I know they've been doing 50, but just an interesting thought I thought I'd mention. But otherwise, I like the chapter. 8, 9 out of 10 for me. Cheers. Peace.